So, young ones, how do we get you there? We want to do critical thinking. We're not raised or taught the way you were taught. You were taught in a way that in high school in Ghana we call spoon feeding. For us, you only needed a teacher in the classroom who could show that he knew his stuff, and you wanted to be like him. Now, that's not going to fly here. So, how do we get you there? We are not part of the way you were taught in high school. So it's difficult for us to teach in a way that you are familiar with. Over to you, Young. Yes.
When I think about critical thinking, I think it's supposed to help your mind explore different opportunities or different experiences. Like, it's just supposed to make you question stuff. Okay, well, you know, you tell me this one thing. Okay, well, how did this happen? How did that lead up to that? Like, it's not supposed to be like, oh, I asked you a question, you just give me an answer, and it's that. I mean, if you know the answer, you know it. But if you don't, like, you're not going to know everything. So I feel like, especially when I get into a class that I didn't even know existed, like, I'm taking a broadcast meteorology class right now, and I was completely lost when I got in there. Everybody else before me took a prerequisite class, and so everybody's like answering, and I'm just like, wait a minute, what? What's a jet stream again? How does that happen? What is this thing over here? You know, it's supposed to make you feel like, okay, I know what I'm talking about, but let me go deeper. You know, so a lot, and I agree with what you said about kids being raised by television and video games, and I'm only 20, but my cousins that are younger than me, like, it seems like we're a whole nother generation because they just, everything is so different. Like, my grandparents raised me, and they're from the South. So I got the same kind of, you know, I was raised the same way he was, even though I'm the same age as some of these people that I'm growing up with, and people just don't want it, like, you know, like you should. I feel like the fact that education wasn't, like, we couldn't educate ourselves before. It was like, no, you can't have this. And now that we can, I feel like people take it for granted. It's like, oh, I'm basically giving it to you. It's free now. Like, you have it here. You're free to walk into a library and get a book and educate yourself. Like, you don't have to wait for somebody else to do it. And I feel like just because it's there, people don't use it for that reason. I feel like some people are ungrateful.
That's a good point. When you hear stories about Nkrumah and other people in that generation and successive generations, and some of the things that Professor Roediger and others have spoken about, how do you see that in relationship to your own life and your own learning process and your own future? What connections? Do you make any connections with that?
I think right now we're in two different educational times. The times of Kumar, like in the early 60s.
Nkrumah.
Or Nkrumah.
J-Crew. Nkrumah.
Nkrumah.
Thank you.
Okay. The times of Nkrumah and us now, I think we're in two different educational time frames. Now, people, they want to learn fast. That's why we have PowerPoints. That's why we have quick notes, because, and then that's why the teachers, and even more nowadays, they'll tell you, okay, study the slides. It's not even, I mean, honestly, in your classroom, people read the book, but who's really in the book anymore? It's all from the PowerPoints now and stuff. So at that time, I think people were more, they took their time to critically think, read the material, learn it, apply it to your life. Anymore nowadays, I feel like people are just trying to just get the grade and move on.
Just like everybody's coming up, well, the first time I heard this was last semester, and I almost fell on the ground. It was funny at first, but then it made me think, like, people actually think like that. I told this girl that I used to live down the hall from when I was staying on campus, I told her I was struggling in this one class, and she said to me, she said, well, what grade do you have? I said, maybe like a B or a C, but we have a test coming up, and I'm not feeling too great about it. And she was like, well, just don't forget, C's get degrees. And I'm like, what? Like, I have to have a certain GPA to get into my department. I don't think C's is going to get me there. I'm sorry. But that's just how people think. I agree with what he said. I actually have one professor for the same class, and that's all she knows. She teaches from the PowerPoint, and I hate it because I don't learn anything. But I hate to say this, but it benefits me when it's time for a quiz, because it's like, we take online quizzes, so when I need to, know something, I just go click on the PowerPoint and say, oh, here's the answer right here. And I agree. I don't learn anything. Like, I don't remember it. I just know I can look at it and see, oh yeah, I remember seeing this on the PowerPoint. Here's the answer. The answer is C. You know, so I think it's a part of the teacher. Like, some of the teachers are lazy too. You know, so they are, because if you just make a PowerPoint and the first day I come to class, I'm just thinking the only reason why people come to her class is because she gives points for being in class. She gives you 3 points to come to class every day, but you don't do any homework. You do online quizzes every so often. When we have a quiz, we don't have class, and it's 15 questions, and we got all the answers. Like, what? I don't understand what's going on here. So, I mean, unfortunately, it's a class that I have to take. And I think she's the only teacher who teaches it, but I think it's a part of the student and the teacher. But you can't make, you know, you can't go up to the teacher and be like, oh, well, you know, I think your method of teaching is horrible. And I mean, she's going to be like, okay, if you don't like it, then drop my class, you know? So I think it comes down to the teacher and the student.
So you see learning as a partnership?
Yes.
That's good. That's really good. Thank you.
You're welcome.
I was going to speak to you on what you said. In a way, it is 2 time periods, but yet it's only 1 because time continues. But what you retain and how you apply critical thinking will help you later. You may get to see, but when you enter the workforce, what you retain and how you apply it will advance your potential career. I'm a non-traditional student. I've been in the workforce. I've worked jobs for many years. What's going on now, people are returning to school at my age because of the economy. You all are going to be the catalyst for the future. If you, as an individual and students as a whole, resort to saying the C will get the degree, then you'll be average. And the people coming in from other countries, the Pakistanis, people coming in from all over the world, coming into the United States, with advanced degrees in science and math, will hold the positions that you seek, but you didn't apply the critical thinking. And it'll hurt us and our children, our offspring. And see, one thing about the system, they give us diversionary tactics, as I call it. They give you a PowerPoint. So now the critical thinking is, I can remember this PowerPoint. But now when I go into the workforce, oh boy, I need that PowerPoint. Right. You know, it's like this. Eastern is a wonderful university. One downfall that I don't really like about the system is textbook rental. It helps you now, but you don't keep the book. Some of these older people here that's been to school, I guarantee they have a library of their books.
I got my Latin high school book.
Latin.
Probably the oldest book in my library is my Latin high school book.
You can't find Latin in the school system now. That was once the language to teach. Greek. You can't find it in the school system. What I'm saying to you, it is 2 time periods, but yet it's only 1. Yet it's only 1. So if you don't apply your critical thinking now, it'll hurt you later. You ever heard any adults say, I can't even help my kids with homework? You know why? Because they didn't apply the critical thinking to be able to help them down the road. That's just my take on it.
It's like we don't think down the road.
You know why we don't? You know why we don't? You know why we don't? Because we have took this diversionary tactic that the system has given us, think about right now. But as a non-traditional student that have children your age that have graduated from college, I have children that have graduated from college, I taught them to think down the road because there'll come a time that you'll sit and hold a conference and you'll repeat some of the things we said. So think about now and apply it for later. So down the road is really right now. It's how you prepare yourself for it. Preparation is the key to success.
If I could just bring this back to Nkrumah for a minute. I was thinking about this all morning, particularly since your first presentation, and because I think there's and your comment about 5 degrees in a decade.
Yes.
You know, so I mean, one way that I think would think about that is, oh, here's a role model, and you hear that word a fair amount now. That and there's nothing wrong with that. It's good to think of Nkrumah as a role model. But there's also a sense in which he could do that because he had a political project and he had a sense that the world was going to change and that he was going to be a part of change in the world. You know, if our only goal is to outcompete the Pakistanis, for jobs, you can do that, but I think that actually leads you to try to figure out what PowerPoint slides you have to look at. And, so I mean, I think that there's a moment, the reason I was thinking about it is the last time I was in Ghana, I was at the National Archives with a friend, and I was just kind of hanging out, and the archivist, I think, was looking to busy, make me be busy, not bother him. And so he brought out a bunch of Nkrumah material, and there's kind of this not exactly true story that circulates that Nkrumahs didn't leave any materials. And they're actually finding more and more Nkrumah stuff in Ghana now. And so Cletus, this archivist, brought out a box of Nkrumah materials having to do with the United States and some other things. And it was just amazing. I mean, Nkrumah was corresponding with people from all over the world. He was involved in a lawsuit with people in Kansas City against the use of the word Negro as what we now call a hate crime. He was answering almost all of his own correspondence. So the one thing that I really remember most vividly, he wrote in green ink. Only he could have green ink, and so he fashioned these replies, handwriting in green ink. He got a letter from South Africa, from a African in South Africa who owned a dry cleaning shop, and the letter said, I read your stuff about Pan-Africanism and power to African people, and I feel like if you could just figure out a way for me to get a loan for my dry cleaning shop, that would really be Pan-African power. And that was, and it was exactly the kind of letter that you wouldn't answer, that you would just say, oh my goodness, I'm being misunderstood, and you know. And instead, Nkrumah wrote a long reply, kind of patiently educating this guy about what Pan-Africanism might mean and why it's different from self-interest and why it involves other things. And I thought, wow, you know. The other example of this is Du Bois was moving in the early 60s to Ghana. He in his 90s with his younger wife, Shirley Graham. And Shirley Graham sends all these kind of badgering letters to Nkrumah saying, you need to find us a house. And you guys had a state, you know, and yet he cares about having Du Bois there, and he's responding and he's saying, yeah, I'll try and go on Saturday, and I'll try to go with the realtor, and I'll look, and finally he gets a little bit, I think, mad at Shirley Graham, and he says, look, I can't go this weekend. I have to go to Paris and settle this issue of world peace. I can't go house hunting for you. But he was just so able to do so many different things at once and educate himself and other people about so many different things. And the only time I've ever really felt like this is I taught in South Africa at the moment of liberation in the early 90s. And you know, it was nothing for people to go give 4 and 5 lectures a day and do all of these other things in addition to teaching their classes, and you know, but you know, they thought the world was going to change. They knew that their world was going to change, and so it's not just that these individuals are role models, but there are these social situations that you have to get yourself into where you're inspired by the social moment that you're in, and you say, yeah, I got to learn this because it's important that I know it, because if I learn these things, the world can change. And we, you know, unfortunately, we can't just make that happen by ourselves. It's got to be a social movement. But it is important in thinking about why Nkrumah could do what he did, that he really felt and knew that he was part of a world-changing kind of initiative.